Hello, and welcome back to Paths and Period. I'm your host, Mr. Meyerowitz, and today I'll address another question from one of my current or former students about an issue or topic that they wish to explore further. There are only a couple of days left in the quarterfinal round, and no matter our ranking, every vote is absolutely essential and another nod toward my ambitious plan to collaborate with my colleagues and assemble America's favorite library. But as in any sports competition, this is all or nothing, and I don't anticipate ever recreating this kind of support for this type of contest. So we all need to be in it to win it. Today's question comes from Brian. He writes, quote, "In a globalized world where there are strong economic pressures to learn the most spoken languages, how should nations balance economic practicality with cultural heritage in their education systems?" Wonderful question. This phenomenon of training the best and brightest in a universal language is not new. In fact, at the height of the Roman Republic and Empire, its Roman legions conquered new territories, and its administrators sought to integrate these provinces into their imperial machinery. Non Roman elites were incentivized to assimilate and to learn Latin in order to pursue desirable careers. In later centuries, Sinicization, Anglicization, Gallicization, Germanization, and Russification, among other cultural and educational programs, were implemented to raise a class of white-collar natives worldwide who would do the bidding of their cultural master and earn higher income or higher status insofar that native elites accepted foreign rule. Language and education, in particular, greased the wheels of overseas empires, making treaties, commercial and tax agreements, legal rulings, and cultural principles easier to codify and enforce. A shared language has not only allowed for international institutions to gain credibility and support, but also helped emerging nations cooperate with one another and amplify their voice. Statements from the UN and IMF are often in English. International trade deals and court rulings are also passed around in English. And of course, the allure of Hollywood and Silicon Valley have made English the most dominant language in popular culture and technology. Beyond the Western world, Arab countries craft treaties and trade deals in Arabic and English. China communicates in Mandarin and English. And the British Commonwealth nations, well, you get the idea. Yet, despite the benefits of the shared language in handling political or commercial arrangements, advancing scientific and technological achievements, and assessing students' readiness for university and the professions, the idea of universal languages comes at a very steep cost. First, when more powerful states gain cultural and economic primacy in a colony or a developing nation, indigenous and tribal communities and languages are marginalized, denied access to educational settings, and can go extinct. As one educated generation follows another, as students become more connected to the universal language and the social and economic benefits it confers, and forget about their mother tongues or see little incentive in preserving traditional languages and cultural practices. Second, it's important to recognize that not everyone has access to formal education. When Confucian masters trained Korean students during early Chinese imperial history, or when British administrators educated wealthy Indian elites, the goal was never to conquer native languages and cultures totally. Instead, administrators focused on the professional class and recognized that the native elite could manage various indigenous groups and identities, quell uprisings, and establish stable market and political systems. As a result, millions of workers in colonial India or Nigeria and older generations in settler colonies like Australia and Canada were seldom trained in the imperial tongue or could access privileges reserved for English speakers. We should also remember that learning a language is an incredibly time consuming skill and comes at the expense of learning other equally or more important skills, such as becoming proficient in reading and writing one's own local language. If a Korean individual in America speaks Korean at home but has never learned to read or write it while they learn certain reading and writing standards in English, they may miss certain complexities of both languages, feel like strangers to both tongues and cultures, and have difficulty understanding connections or patterns across languages. This is why certain schools in the US and internationally promote bilingual education. They recognize that there is tremendous value, both culturally and academically, in remaining part of both language communities, finding parallels and overlaps between them, and using one to decode and comprehend the other. Finally, it's worth considering that languages become universalized through power imbalances, and favoring hegemonic languages over local ones denies the authenticity and cultural values of various communities and the individuals and families that comprise them. Stripping a people of their traditional language and training them in a foreign one to be academics, bureaucrats, traders, and doctors may have the effect of casting vast cultural traditions, fashions, literatures, identities, and worldviews into the dustbin of history. It's worth considering how much would be lost to us if an alien species landed on Earth, prohibited us from formal and official communications in any but their own language, and promoted loyalists who prioritized alien language acquisition over traditional cultural practices. This has been a political practice among humans for millennia and has cost us far too many ways of seeing and engaging with the world from native perspectives. During the Cold War, as dozens of former colonies in Asia and Africa became independent, new governments had to determine which languages and which cultures to privilege in order to unify their people at home and represent them internationally. The selection of a dominant language over a minority language essentially amounted to the election of one language group and culture over another, creating a two or multiple tiered social system and sparking rebellions. In Bengal, which was known as East Pakistan from 1947 to 1971, the enforcement of Urdu by West Pakistan as the sole national language triggered Bengali student protests and marches. In one such episode on February 21, 1952, police opened fire on demonstrators in Dhaka, killing several and producing an outcry as well as rapid organization toward the self-determination of Bangladesh. The more West Pakistani officials enforced the law, jailed and killed protesters, and policed speech, the more Bengali activists felt that they were living under foreign occupation. The more they rallied around their own language and identity, and the more they caught the attention of more pluralistic and multicultural nations such as India, who sought to support their struggle for independence against their rival, Pakistan. February 21 has since become International Mother Language Day worldwide, and has encouraged other minority peoples to stand for their own histories, cultures, and identities against oppressive states trying to control them. In southern India, especially in the state of Tamil Nadu, language became a flashpoint in the years after independence. As the Indian government promoted Hindi as a unifying language nationwide, many Tamil speakers feared that their own ancient language and literary traditions would be marginalized in education, government, and professional life. These concerns intensified in the 1960s when proposals to expand the use of Hindi in official settings sparked widespread anxiety. Students, teachers, and political organizations responded with mass demonstrations known as anti-Hindi agitations. Protesters argued that privileging Hindi would create a hierarchy of citizenship, disadvantaging non-Hindi speakers in civil service exams, university admissions, and economic opportunities. In 1965, protests erupted across Tamil Nadu, where strikes, marches, and in some cases, violent clashes with police. The movement was powerful enough that the central government ultimately backed away from making Hindi the sole official language, instead maintaining English as an associate official language alongside it. These protests did not lead to a separatist war, but they did fundamentally reshape Indian language policy. They also helped propel regional political parties to power in Tamil Nadu, where linguistic pride and cultural preservation remain central to political identity. This episode illustrates how deeply language is tied to questions of equality, opportunity, self-respect, and identity, and how attempts to impose a dominant language can provoke sustained and organized resistance even within a democratic state. A useful contrast can be found in Sri Lanka, where language policy contributed to far more violent consequences. In 1956, the government passed the Sinhala Only Act, making Sinhala the sole official language and marginalizing Tamil speakers in government, education, and employment. Unlike in India, where protests led to compromise, many Sri Lankan Tamils came to see language policy as part of a broader pattern of exclusion and discrimination. Peaceful protests in the early years were often met with brutal repression, and over time, tensions escalated into armed conflict. This eventually gave rise to the Tamil Tigers, who fought for an independent Tamil state. The resulting civil war lasted for decades and ended in 2009 after immense human and economic loss. The contrast to Tamil Nadu underscores a crucial point. When governments respond to language-based grievances with accommodation, conflict can be contained. When they respond with exclusion or force, language can become a catalyst for prolonged and devastating violence, including against heads of state like Rajiv Gandhi of India. The language movement that hits closest to home for me, personally, was the Soweto Uprising in 1976, which prompted my father, a newly minted MD in search of a residency, to leave South Africa, his homeland, and his entire family behind, but for his wife in search of a less turbulent home. When the Department of Bantu Education enforced Afrikaans, the language of white Boer settlers, instead of native Bantu dialects as a medium of instruction alongside English in black schools, teachers and students of all ages organized a march in Soweto, a black township in Johannesburg, on June 16, 1976. The police opened fire on peaceful student marchers, killing hundreds. The consequent nationwide protests presented a significant turning point in South Africa, mobilized marches and denunciations against apartheid worldwide, global boycotts against South African products, and made the country a pariah state. For the next decade, the South African government continued to exert deadly force against students and protesters who challenged the supremacy of English and Afrikaans and who sought to liberate the black majority and cultures. When de Klerk ended apartheid in the early 1990s and enacted laws to integrate schools, facilities, and economies, free political prisoners, and make South Africa into, as Desmond Tutu put it, a rainbow nation, South Africa was praised internationally for becoming a multiracial, multilingual democracy after decades of totalitarian apartheid rule. Even South Africa's national anthem, which was adopted in 1997, combined lyrics from 5 languages, Xhosa, Zulu, Sotho, Afrikaans, and English, to symbolize unity, toleration, and reconciliation. Each of these episodes, and dozens or even hundreds of others like them, suggests that language is fundamental to identity, and the erasure or elimination of certain languages or dialects in South Asia or South Africa can lead to anxieties about whitewashing or even ethnic cleansing, and then calls for independence. States often feel that they are strong when they control the national narrative in an official state language. This is what makes the newspeak of Orwell's 1984 so alarming. The government has eliminated all complexity, all diversity, and all subtlety from the language, and can therefore control the way we speak and think about our reality. The implementation of Newspeak, if it ever was implemented by party elites and administrators, is also one of the greatest challenges that Big Brother's regime must overcome. Adopting an official language makes sense when it makes communication more transparent and efficient, but when it is utilized to control minds, erase culture, and deny diversity of ideas and identities, it becomes an existential threat. We would do well to learn this lesson from Orwell, who worried that the politicization of language and the use of euphemism and code words to replace empirical facts and dark truths would reduce us all to mind control. By allowing people to speak freely in languages that resonate with them and that give voice to their own cultural values, we can build bridges between communities that are more durable than the official and controvertible language of the state that operates through iron rules and that erases our heritage, our history, and our identity. Thank you, Brian, for your question. See you on our next passing period. Toodaloo!